We are back on It's Always Game Day in Cincinnati. Lindsay, Patterson, Mike Santagata here. Mike, how are you?
I'm doing great. Had the friend get together for Christmas.
Nice.
So that was nice. Now waiting on the family one. But almost there. But then people listen to this, it still won't be Christmas, I think.
No.
They're probably not listening on Christmas, unless they got a long drive, in which case, hello,
Hello.
family of listener. uh, yeah, so I don't know. What do you got? Favorite Christmas cookie that you eat?
Cookie? I'm
Right?
more of a Buckeye
Okay.
person during Christmas.
Very
I
honored.
love Buckeyes. You know what I love? My parents live in a little bit of a smaller town, and I'm actually going to be going home there, and it's not very far from Cincinnati, but their neighbor will leave homemade Buckeyes, like knock on the door with homemade beautiful Buckeyes and just knock on the door and leave it. And they just don't do that where I live. And I absolutely love that because Buckeyes are amazing. What's your go-to dessert Christmas?
um, Buckeyes are awesome. I don't think of them as like a Christmassy thing,
You
but I guess
don't? Okay.
if you have that specific thought with it, I definitely, in your case, it probably is.
Hmm.
I'm such a gingerbread man. I don't know. I love a gingerbread cookie. I love a gingerbread man. I don't know. Gingy.
There.
I make my own. I found a recipe. It uses like orange zest and like a lot of ingredients that make it, not
Yeah.
taste just like the normal gingerbread cookie you've had. And I love it. I love a gingerbread man with a little. I like making the doodles. Although I had an icing blowout. I was
Yeah.
trying to use the icing, and my wife said I squeezed too hard, which it wasn't coming out fast enough. So what did I do? Squeeze harder, and I blew out the bag. So
Guilty. I've done that before with the icing. It's not fun. They say you should needle it first, and I didn't know what they meant by that, so I obviously messed it up too. Mike, if listeners are currently listening to this podcast and they love gingerbread cookies, hopefully you will drop the recipe over on social media if
just
they do
ask
ask.
somebody shoot me a tweet, and I will reply with it or a DM.
I love it. I love it. And you know what? Right now, it feels great going into Christmas. The Bengals are on a little bit of a win streak. Yes, they need a lot of help, and we'll get to that in just a moment. But they're still there, like a 5-6% chance of making the playoffs. But a lot of help around the league. And the thing is, Christmas Day is absolutely huge for the Cincinnati Bengals. We obviously get Christmas. It's a short week. We get Christmas football over on Netflix. Steelers and Chiefs, everybody's going to be wanting to see the outcome of that game. I do feel like that is connected to what happens after the Bengals game on Saturday. Because if you are a Cincinnati Bengals fan, and Mike, good for you because your wife is a Steelers fan. So this works out. You were going to be a
Whole
big
family,
Steeler. Whole
whole
family.
family. I'm going to be there.
But you're going to be one of them. You're going to be rooting for the Steelers. Well, I know you're just going with the flow right now. You're going with the flow until they have a shot and they're really legit back into it. But if the Steelers do beat the Chiefs, it does factor into kind of the outcome. If the Bengals beat the Denver Broncos, they have to beat the Denver Broncos. That is a very important matter to get into the postseason. You have to win out. But if the Steelers win, you have the Steelers maybe. They're stuck in that third seed and they can't move and they get the division under wraps and they're going to take it pretty easy against the Cincinnati Bengals, the last game of the season that the Bengals might need. And the Chiefs will have to play really hard against the Denver Broncos, meaning Patrick Mahomes might have to play. Most of their starters would need to be out there for that game against the Denver Broncos. And it would be about the number one seed if, of course, the Bills win this weekend too. So huge game on Christmas.
So I'm fully with the idea that you need the Chiefs to be trying against the Broncos.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care if the Steelers rest their starters against the Bengals, personally. Like,
Yeah.
if you don't beat the Steelers, why are
Oh,
you in the playoffs? Yeah.
you have to beat them no matter what, with their stars or with
Right.
not.
But,
But
like,
if
if you
it
can't
it could
beat
help you.
the fully healthy Steelers, then you don't deserve to make the playoffs to me. I mean,
True.
it's a
True.
playoff game. Just treat it. It should be a playoff game, basically. So I don't think they're the favorite in the AFC. So what are you making the playoffs for if you need the backup Steelers to get in there? You just get bounced week one. So I don't care about the Steelers. I do care about the Chiefs because they do have to actually play to beat the Broncos, and we'll get to that preview in a little bit. But I'll be rooting for the Steelers just so that the Chiefs have to play the Broncos.
Yeah.
Other than that, I mean, like, I am going with the flow, but the closer we've gotten, the more I'm like, oh man, would be cool. Sure would be cool. Do you think like the biggest barrier might be, let's say the Chiefs do lose, the biggest barrier is the Colts and Dolphins losing one game? Because I thought the Dolphins would lose against the 49ers when that game started. And then I saw how it was going and went, oh no, they're not going to. And it ruined my fantasy my fantasy capabilities too. I don't want to talk about it too long. 3 40-plus yard touchdowns in a matter of 5 minutes. I had an 80% chance to win, and it immediately went down to like 10. I was like, "Oh my god!" 5 minutes.
That's gonna be the.
That's
gonna be the. Yeah.
We need to lose a game, and they are playing the bottom of the barrels out there.
Yeah, I truly think it's all going to come down to the last game of the season. I do. I think, I mean, obviously the Bengals have to beat the Denver Broncos. I have to keep reminding myself that has to happen on Saturday. But if that does happen, and I know that you have to worry about the Colts and the Dolphins on Sunday, but I think that both of them are going to win. I think it's all going to come down to that last game of the season, and everything is going to be determined by the Dolphins and the Colts loss. Look, they do have the Browns this weekend if you look at the Dolphins, and maybe Jameis is good to go, and he can just let it fly. And
it wasn't a health thing, though, was it? I thought he got benched.
He did hurt his shoulder, or maybe that was a little bit of a let's add on to not playing very well and your shoulder's not doing great. But we'll see, what that looks like if they do just roll out with the same quarterback in back-to-back weeks. If they do, then yeah, they don't stand a chance. I truly don't think that they'll have enough. But we'll see what that looks like. And then obviously the Colts play a division game, the last game of the season against the Jags. I don't feel confident in. So I'm going to be honest with you, Mike. Obviously, the closer they get, it's nice to play meaningful football. But I do kind of feel like today, and just even after the game, I'm like, I just don't know if the Colts and the Dolphins are going to drop one. And that's what sucks. But at the same time, the Bengals did this to themselves. So
yeah, they each play a New York team too, I think. One plays the Giants, one plays the Jets.
Yeah, it's cold. It's cold where the Dolphins are going. We'll see. We'll see. I don't know. I don't. It would.
Or New York to take down the Dolphins is
in a dream. Here's a dream. A Christmas miracle dream for the Cincinnati Bengals. Say the Steelers take care of business. They beat the Chiefs. You move on to Saturday. Bengals beat the Denver Broncos. Obviously, 2 amazing good things happened in a 72-hour period. Then you move over to Sunday, and Bengals fans are like, you know what? I'll pop these games on. I'll see what's going on with the Colts, and then the Dolphins are playing, and one of them drop one game, and you're down to the last game of the season. Chiefs need to beat the Broncos. Bengals need to beat the Steelers, and the person that didn't drop the game from the previous week needs to lose. It could be awesome. It could be absolutely awesome. Good for the NFL, but man, if all of that works out, just for the Bengals and the Chiefs and Steelers outcome, that makes Sunday kind of fun. Makes it a little fun. Like some stress watching, but look, my team's done. They won. But at the end of the day, they did this to themselves, and there's a lot of games that obviously everybody would want back. And unfortunately, it doesn't work that way. And hopefully this is one of those lessons, again, that you can't start your season out slow. Because if you have that Patriot to win right now, if you have one of the Ravens games, it does make me sick to my stomach just because of the way Joe Burrow continues to play out there and Jamar Chase. But I do want to look back just a little bit. I know we just recorded our recap of what happened in the Bengals Browns game. You went back, you watched some of the tape. We don't have to go over every position group or anything like that. And honestly, there's just a couple things I want to bring up, Mike, and we hit on it a little bit. And I think we're seeing it out there on social media right now too. It's the youth movement. That was one of the biggest things that you wanted to see out of these games, even if the Cincinnati Bengals, they weren't going to make the postseason or they weren't going to be in it as a possibility. You want to see these younger guys because the defense has struggled all season. So why not change it up a little bit? You went back, you watched the tape. Did anything when you went back to see it again, stand out for you?
you start with the youth on the defense. I thought Jordan Battle had a really good game in this one, in a few ways, in coverage and in run defense. He had a few plays that were kind of awesome at defending the run, to where Matt Minnick was like, "Hey, what if he puts on 10 pounds and just plays linebacker?" But I don't know if he could do that. But it was a really good game from him in terms of run defense, and he did a pretty good job in coverage. Almost had 2 picks. If him and Pratt could figure out who was going to hold on to that ball instead of fighting over it until it fell to the ground. Yeah, I think that was the first takeaway I had, was like, oh man, like Jordan Battle is really fighting for possibly being a starter next year, even though kind of up and down throughout the season. I think this is a really good game for him. I thought the defensive line towards the end of that game, they all turned up a little bit. You had Murphy pushing the pocket. You had Johnson went around the outside once. You had Chris Jenkins get 2 sacks. I do think when you watch the sacks, they kind of go a little bit cleanup. I think both of them. One of them, DTR, kind of runs up the middle, and Jenkins is able to bring him down. The other one took a while to get there, a little bit of a coverage sack. But overall, still 2 sacks in a single game, and he's getting near the quarterback. And then Jackson, interesting play where he gets knocked down, but then just continues fighting and then is able to wrap up his legs from the ground on all fours. So that was a pretty interesting play. I think overall they had some interesting games, and it makes you wonder about the future of those guys. I think it's also worth pointing out some of the older guys in this game, where Mike Hilton, heck of a game. That was an awesome game. 2 different tackles for a loss on the quarterback, and neither one was a sack because they were both run plays. But he got there so fast on the one that was going to be a handoff. It was a run play for sure. That was supposed to be a run play, and he was there, and DTR had to turtle down and make sure he didn't hand that ball off because it was going to be a fumble. The other one was a design quarterback run, and he got back there, took him down so fast that the statisticians, one of them replied to me, wasn't sure if this was a run play or not. That's how fast he got back there. I think you could see it on replay. It was, because the left tackle was already up at the linebackers, but pretty cool game from him. I think on the other end, where are we with Jermaine Pratt?
I'm ready to move on.
I think it's tough, but he doesn't look as athletic as he used to. He's giving you bad play. He's a negative asset right now on the field.
Yeah.
Understand he made some plays early in the season and was a little bit of a ball magnet at that point, but watching this game just kind of went, if you had Logan Wilson in there and you just had Akeem Davis-Gaither flipped over, would you lose anything? Or if you went and drafted a guy, or if you went and just got somebody out there, or if Muma takes a step, or Shaka Hayward, or one of these young guys takes a step, like, how much are you going to lose if Jermaine Pratt's not on the team? Because maybe you want to save a little bit of money if you're doing a T. Higgins extension. Because we've talked a lot about Sam Hubbard, and we're like, well, yeah,
you got to move.
It's time for him. But watching this game made me go, I think it's time for Pratt too. I was watching and thinking, like, last year I was thinking, okay, well, he said there's communication issues with the safeties and he doesn't trust what's going on behind him, so that's why he's not playing good. And Wilson played worse last year than he did this year. But then this year happens and you're still kind of going, you're still not playing good. Like, what's going on here? So that was the one part that was kind of just probably got to talk about it. I don't know if Pratt's on the team next year with how he's playing.
Yeah, and I think that's all fair. They definitely need to add to the linebacker room anyways, because you need the depth. And I still like Akeem Davis-Gaither, and I know he's on a 1-year deal, but I would love to bring him back for maybe another maybe make it another 2-year deal. We'll see what it looks like. But yeah, I definitely think it's time to move on from Jermaine Pratt. And I think that's what this offseason should be about, because obviously the percentage to make the postseason is very low. You focus on your positives. Who made those plays towards the end? And I'm not trying to get on, oh yeah, Geno Stone, he's the guy. You got to make sure he might land himself back on the roster next year. He's obviously going to be under contract, but they can let go of him in the offseason. But there are other guys that I think you need to realize it's time to move on. It's time, and that's okay, because you look at this season, because they underachieved, and I know they're sitting at 7-8 right now, but it was still underachieved when you think about the defensive side of the ball with the way the offense is playing. You need an overhaul. You need a mini rebuild on the defensive side, and maybe it's a major rebuild on the defensive side, depending on some of these guys and who they decide to bring back. But yeah, I think that's totally fair when you talk about Jermaine Pratt and possibly moving on from him. On the offensive side, I mentioned it today because obviously we keep saying McKinley Jackson, Chris Jenkins, all these other guys. It's awesome what they're doing. They're stepping up. Jordan Battle, you mentioned it. Yoshi, I feel like he should be included in that conversation, because one of the things when Joe was injured last year, the second half of the season, I wanted to see more Charlie Jones and Yoshi with this offense, because you just want to say, hey, they might need them the next year. You might need them the following year. What if they move on from T. Higgins? I'm not saying Yoshi's a T. Higgins replacement, but if you could find him as a solid wide receiver 3, and I'm still team bring Mike Gesicki back as that option too, and just split with him and Yoshi. But that's a really big positive, because there were points in the season that it felt like Yoshi wasn't, my confidence wasn't there. I felt like I was losing it a little bit. So just seeing him right now, and maybe in these final 2 games, show up, be a reliable guy, is absolutely huge going into the offseason.
Yeah, I thought it was a great game from Yoshi. He made good on a play that I went, what the heck are you doing, in the first Browns matchup where they threw a go ball against Denzel Ward with him. They did it this game and he caught it. And like I have to say, probably bad process, probably not your best decision, but got it down, accurate. Yoshi made the play. Maybe I'm underrating Yoshi in that instance. I just think Denzel Ward, all pro corner against your third wide receiver, I'm not sure. There's probably a better matchup on this field, but it worked. Credit to him. Caught another touchdown. Yoshi's been great. I think, like, is he locked in? Let's say T. Higgins is back, Jamar Chase is back. You lock and load him in as your wide receiver 3. I think that's fine, because to me, your wide receiver 3 isn't your third biggest target first, because let's say Gesicki's back. And maybe he is your third biggest target. It would probably be by a committee then. Maybe they don't like that. Maybe they do. They ran a committee earlier. Like, that's the one part I think about, where like it was Irwin out there because they trusted him. What does that say about the other guys behind Yoshi? I don't know, but
yeah,
it's not like they're unwilling to do a committee if there's guys that are earning the snaps. So I think maybe you don't lock and load him as like an 80% of snaps player, but as your third wide receiver, I think he's perfectly fine. I think people have complained about it a little bit, but when you have 2 monsters like Higgins and Chase, like I wouldn't want him to be my second wide receiver. I don't know about that, but as your third guy, make some plays, make some tough catches, red zone monster. He's got a role in this league, I think, is the main thing I think of, where he has a place.
Yeah.
I can't say that about any of the wide receivers under him. Like, I don't know if they have a place in the league or not, but I know Yoshi does. And I don't think that's as a wide receiver 5 or the fourth, even the fourth guy. Like, the fourth guy's fine if, you know, something happens in the draft or wherever. But I think he's fine as the third guy. Like, I think I would be perfectly fine doing that going into next season, rather than trying to find another upgrade on it. And maybe you get one of the guys behind him to develop. I mean, Charlie Jones has been injured during off season, so maybe that's why he hasn't been able to scoot up the depth chart. Jermaine Burton knows he has to lock in a little bit more this off season to be able to get the reps and get the time on the field. So maybe he does that and he earns a role splitting time with Yoshi next year. But I think if I went into next season and Yoshi was projected to just be your wide receiver 3, I'm perfectly fine with that. Assuming the Bengals are doing something at tight end where he's going to take some of the pressure off, and the running back's always going to be featured a little bit with check downs and get some of the targets as well. So yeah, I think Yoshi has shown that he can play in the league, and this was a good game for him.
Yeah, and I'm looking forward to the next 2 games to see his role. And obviously, you're always going to go to T. Higgins, Jamar Chase is your number 1 and your number 2, and that should be the way this offense goes, and it is the way when both are healthy and they're out there. So we'll see how that works out for Yoshi over the next few games. But yeah, big offseason for them when it comes to the wide receiver room. There's a guy I wanted to mention that we didn't talk about it yesterday on the pod when we did record our post game of the Bengals and Browns, and then we're going to move on to the prediction to Bengals and the Denver Broncos at home at Paycor this Saturday. Isaiah Williams on special teams. What did you think of him out there?
I have no idea. Do you have a take?
I thought he looked okay from what we've watched most of this season. I thought he was okay on special teams. He's a new addition.
Yeah, look, I'm into it. Sure.
Yeah.
I know he's the guy that's playing over Burton right now, isn't he?
Burton was out there once, I want to say, on one return, but I thought he was okay. You just want a reliable guy back there, a guy who's going to catch it, get some yards, don't go backwards. And so far, I thought he was okay. Maybe my expectations are extremely low right now from some of the returns this year, but
yeah, Tyson Anderson's the guy on special teams that stood out to me all year, but they got another guy. Sure, was he returning?
Yeah, he's returning.
I just missed it. I just wasn't paying attention. Really.
Mike's like, I'm zoning out at this Cleveland
special
Bengals
teams happening. My eyes glaze over. I'm ready.
That's okay. That's okay. And again, my expectations are pretty low when it comes to the return game. But I was like, okay, this guy seems reliable. They got him off the Lions, and so far I'm okay with it. So we'll see.
I think the other thing I want to mention is I thought Amari Smith played really well before his injury. Thought he was doing a really good job. So worth pointing out how he played in the game. And I thought Cochran, it was a step down from the game before, where he didn't settle in the same way he did last week. That's what I was a little bit worried about with him when you're talking about like a UDFA type of offensive tackle. You rely on him once and you get out of it clean. Cool. You do it twice, and then that's how you start running into issues. And Cody Ford obviously had his struggles, although he went against Myles Garrett the entire game. So
that's crazy. If you would have told me that, well, he did a couple times though. He did the first time around too, because he had to step in for Orlando.
Garrett plays over the left tackle, so I grade Ford on a little bit of a curve where I just went, like what are you supposed to do against Myles Garrett when you're not a top 3 left tackle? Yeah, it is what it is. Like he's gonna lose. How fast does he lose?
And I know, we mentioned it earlier on the other pod when it comes to Amarius. Look, I hope he's not. I hope he can get back out there. We'll obviously get the injury reports over Christmas, so we won't be recording after that. Sorry about that, but hopefully he's good to go, and the team was just watching out for him. Because they know this is a huge game against the Denver Broncos on Saturday. And then maybe they'll get some good news for Orlando Brown Jr. I know he's been working on the rehab field. I wasn't really expecting much because of how the season was going. I thought they were just going to shut him down, and maybe he is shut down. And, the final 2 games, we don't see him. But I think it's a positive that he's out there practicing on the rehab field over to the side. And maybe we'll get some positive news when the team is back to practice on Tuesday. So, offensive line, they're playing a little bit of shuffle, something Joe Burrow has seen plenty of times before, and hopefully they can get some health in these final 2 games, get some of their starters back out there. But let's go on to the game on Saturday. I will say this. I know we've ranked kickoffs before. I'm not making you rank a kickoff right here because we've talked about it plenty, but Saturday, 4:30 in December, count me in as one of my favorite kickoffs.
Okay. Yeah.
It's not a Sunday. It's not a Sunday night. It's not Monday. It's not Thursday. It is Saturday, 4:30 in Cincinnati. Playoff-like atmosphere, I believe.
Yeah. It's all right.
You're not a Saturday person?
Saturday. That's my issue. Where if you want to do something on that Saturday, good luck.
I mean,
maybe late Saturday, but if I wanted to go do something, go somewhere. Yeah.
Mike's not a 4:30. Mike's not a 4:30
Sunday in my brain is already football day. Now on Saturday's football day. I don't really follow college.
All right.
And this is part of the reason. I need one day. One day. I need one day and the Monday night game, of course, and the Thursday night game. And now we're going to get Wednesday football and here's Saturday football. So it's pretty much every day. I think Friday is the only day they did a Black Friday game. They're not allowed to do a lot of Friday games because of high school football,
Mhm.
and they're not allowed to do a lot of Saturday games because of college football. So Tuesday, your only clean day, like where you don't have football to watch outside of the COVID year.
I remember the COVID year. I was like, wait a minute,
Tuesday
we're getting
afternoon
weekday.
football.
It was I obviously hated COVID, but that kickoff was amazing. At home, get a little kickoff right when work was over. It was amazing. I loved it. So obviously the players' safety, I'm sure they're not huge fans of it. We've already heard enough about Wednesday's game. Glad the
Yeah,
Bengals aren't playing in it, but they got a Saturday game. Obviously a short week for them, a little bit of a longer week for the Denver Broncos. I think when you looked at this game on the schedule, I kind of thought the teams would be flip-flopped to where they're at in the season. Not too far record-wise, but I thought, okay, since he's probably going to be, playing for that 1 seed, maybe 2 seed, hopefully have the division wrapped up, even though it's a competitive division in the AFC North. But this is where we're at. Denver Broncos obviously had a really good season with Bo Nix, and I think the focus is on the defensive side of the ball when I think about this matchup. And obviously, we can get to offense in just a moment. They can run the ball. We watched that against the Chargers the other night. But when you think about the Denver Broncos, I want to focus on the defense right now. When you see the matchups with Jamar Chase and T. Higgins against their secondary, I know they were battling a few injuries, but Pat did play in that Chargers game, and we'll obviously get practice reports later this week. What do you think about the Bengals wide receivers against this defense?
yeah. Pat Surtain was full practice all of last week, and he played in the game, so I assume he'll play in this
Mhm.
game. Very good corner. That'll be an interesting
Mhm.
fight. I think him versus Chase is very interesting. Um, Riley Moss went from did not practice to limited, but then he was ruled out.
Mhm.
If I had to guess, I think he plays because
Mhm.
whenever you're getting better throughout the week and you're like a game time out, I feel like the next week is when you play. And it's a long week too. It wasn't he might have only been out because it was a short week. Like if it was
Mhm.
Sunday, maybe he played. So I think they're gonna be healthy in the secondary. And it's a very good secondary. I think the Broncos they're interesting. They play defense in a way that the Bengals used to have trouble with when we talk about like the Mike McDonald type stuff. Not that they do the exact same defense, but I think of a
Mhm.
lot of the two high shells, the quarters looks, how they try to play top down on everything. The Bengals haven't had issues with that this season. When you think about like the Chargers, they had some start like they kind of sputtered at the start of that Chargers game, but then they were able to kick it into high gear. The offense has just been very good, no matter who they've played. So can that continue against the Broncos? The Broncos are one of the best defenses in the league. Chargers were able to have success. I think the Bengals could have success in this game, but that corner versus wide receiver matchup, the across the board, those are going to be huge. And can Chase and Higgins win when they're isolated in those situations? I think that's one of the keys to the game. And
Yeah.
I don't know. It's good on good. It's good on good. I think that's the fun part of it. This is superstar versus superstar.
Yeah, I think that's the matchup I'm looking at, and taking nothing away from Bo Nix because we'll get to him in just a moment. But I just think about how their defenses perform, and honestly, how their defenses perform for a while now. I think about that matchup a couple years ago, Bengals. I think they won 15-10. It was very cold. It was in Denver, and it was obviously a huge part in that season because they were on a 10-game win streak going into that AFC Championship game, and it was just a fluke game. They had a really good defense. And I really feel like it's been like that for the last couple of years. They just really couldn't get anything going offensively. And obviously they let Russ go in the offseason. But yeah, that's the part that concerns me too. Other guys that could possibly step up and who I still want to see involved is a guy like Mike Gesicki. I always say that, even when T's out there, when Jamar's out there, keep him involved as a reliable weapon. Maybe we'll see that from Yoshi. Same thing from Chase Brown. Are you expecting much from the run game against the Denver Broncos?
That I wonder what they rank this season. Look that up, but I feel like Chase Brown. I predicted Chase Brown not to have a great game last game, and he did. So I could be big wrong on any of this. Currently, just in terms of yards per attempt, they've got the third best defense in the league, holding opponents to 3.9 yards per attempt, and the fifth best defense in terms of yards in general for defending the run. So it's a pretty good run defense.
Yeah.
I don't know if I would trust it. Like, it could happen. Like, I did not think they were going to be able to run the ball that well against the Browns, and then they did. I think there were also some injuries that factored into that, where you end up getting some of the interior guys were hurt for the Browns, and on the
Mhm.
edge you had some guys that, like James Houston. I know he was a claim from the Lions, not a run defender. He played in that game, or at least was active. I don't remember seeing him. So, but yeah, not a run defender. So, like, some of that probably trickled in there, but it's interesting. If I had to predict it, I think the Broncos stop the run against the Bengals, but I don't think I'd rule like, that's not a lock. Like, I'm not going to DraftKings or whatever sports book and just like locking in Chase Brown under rushing yards, because I think he could just pop a big one off. You see him get very close and actually has popped one of those off before, or B, they actually do run the ball okay, because the Broncos end up, spending a lot more resources trying to defend against the pass.
Yeah. Okay, let's flip sides. The story of the season, obviously, when you think about the rookie quarterbacks, they're all, having themselves this season, and Bo Nix is definitely in that conversation. What scares me about their offense is, and not that the Bengals can't stop the run, the defenses, they've had back-to-back good performances. But again, I'm going to look at the opponent of who they played. And I know they can't help that, but they played Cooper Rush and they played DTR. So not putting too much into it, but if you continue to see some of these guys step up, Mike Hilton talked about it. They're trying to simplify this defense. They're trying to make it less complicated with the communication on the defensive side of the ball. And some of these other guys have stepped up in the last few games. Will we see that again? This is do or die for them. It is postseason for them right now, because you lose, your season's over. You have no chance at the postseason. Win, survive, and advance. This is a huge matchup for the defense. You get that opportunity again against Bo Nix, the Broncos offense. How do you feel about that matchup?
I don't feel great. Like, I'm not moved enough by their performances against bad offenses, where you had red zone turnovers in all of those games, I think. Maybe not the Titans, but then against the Titans you had six turnovers in general. I don't know if the Broncos are going to really turn the ball over that much when you look at, their games over the last 6 weeks. They have 5 turnovers. Like, that's not elite, care of the ball, but that's not bad either. They're middle of the pack right now and turning the ball over 16th. So can they get some turnovers? Maybe that'd be the path of them having a good game defensively, because I don't think they're just going to stifle them. Look at the past few games for the Broncos: 27 points against the Chargers, 31 against the Colts, 41 against the Browns, 29 against the Raiders, 38 against the Falcons. Then you get into like 14 against the Chiefs, 10 against the Ravens. But having 27 or more points in all of their last 5 games, I would probably predict that they're going to score 27 plus in this game. Would love to be wrong. Would love for the Bengals defense to prove me wrong. But I have said it a few times. I won't be moved by this Bengals defense until I see it against a quality opponent. This is a quality opponent. So if they give a good game, I'm in. This is a quarterback that I think can hang in the league based off of what we've seen. So they can get him confused. They can stop him from finding an open receiver. They can bring him down. They can, stop this passing game. Awesome. I'm in. Their run game hasn't been awesome. I think it's actually below average when you look at like just their general rushing stats, but actually on early downs, they're one of the better run offenses in the league. So they get themselves into situations where they're in third and short. They're not getting themselves in the third and long very often. The run game's good for that. It just hasn't been an elite run unit where they can just rely on that up and down the field. So this defense, I'm not predicting them to have a good game. Are you?
No, not at all. Even when I was watching them, and again, I don't want to take anything away from what the defense is doing. I'm so happy to see the young guys step up, because they are the future. And I think it's really telling when Joe Burrow was in his post game and he was calling out the young guys on the defensive side of the ball. He's paying attention to that. They deserved it. There was post game locker room game balls to all of them. Not taking anything away from the defense, but I agree with you. This is going to be tough. And the Broncos are playing good football. And I know they're coming off a division loss to the Chargers. They need one more win and they're in the postseason. I don't want them to win this football game. I want the Cincinnati Bengals to win their third home game, because We don't get a lot of wins at home right now. And the way Joe Burrow and this offense is playing, I want them to continue to stack them, make it 4 in a row. When I think about this matchup, I am still concerned about the Broncos defense and the way Bo Nix is playing this year. Mike, I'm making you go first. Give your score prediction.
I think the one guy we didn't mention that could be a big X factor in this game is the Broncos interior rusher, Zach Allen. He's been really good this season. He's going to be going against these guards. He's one of the best pass rushers, bar none in the NFL in general, but especially from the interior. I think there's a chance that if the Bengals have a bad offensive game, it comes from Zach Allen just destroying the interior of this offensive line. And they've got some good quality guys around him. Like DJ Jones is an interior guy that I like. John Franklin Myers is a guy that plays a little bit of end, a little bit of interior. And on the outside, you've got Nick Bonito, who's got 2 touchdowns on the year. Like, they've got a pretty good pass rush situation. Jonathan Cooper, I think, another guy that I think still plays for them. I know they had a bunch of guys that were kind of like, oh, yeah, look at all these different edge rushers. And in my mind, I was like, wow, that's a lot. I'm going to forget some of these. But their defensive line is very good. I think the one part of that is I think Burrow has canceled that out a lot of this year, where if I'm going to try to predict, I don't think the pass rush has a huge effect. It could, but if I had to guess, I think that they might get some pressure, but we'll see if it has a real effect on the quarterback. Burrow has been one of the best quarterbacks under pressure all season. And we'll see if they can bring him down, because we've watched that a lot the past few weeks where the rush gets there, but they don't finish. I think that's almost what a lot of this game comes down to for the Bengals offense, because Pat Surtain might be able to hang with these wide receivers, but can the other guys? I don't know. So we'll see what they do defensively. Do you follow Chase with Surtain? I don't think they've done that much this year. So maybe they just leave Surtain on one side and then they try to just bracket whoever's on the other side. Mm-hmm. It'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to see what they do defensively in this game. But if I had to guess, I think the Bengals are going to be able to score in this game. They've been able to score in basically all their games, especially after the slow start. On the other side, I think the Broncos are going to be fine scoring the ball, like we talked about. Mm-hmm. I think this game ends up going over. 49.5. I think we're talking another like 31-27 type game. I'm going to go with the Bengals. I
love it, Mike.
I think it's tough to pick them to win this game, but
going with your heart.
Feels like they'll be able to pull stuff out. Like I think about these advantages the Broncos have, but at the end of the day, the Bengals quarterback has been so good that he's been able to overcome a lot of that. And I'm just going to roll with the idea that you can only have so many of these crazy losses. Like, some of those have to be wins eventually. Some of these close games eventually have to swing the Bengals' way. I guess that did in the Cowboys game, where the punt got blocked and then they fumbled the ball on the return of the blocked punt. Yeah. But I think they'll be able to pull it out. We'll see, but there's a clear path to a Broncos win in this game. But I think it's a true 50-50 to me. So I'll go 31-27 Bengals.
Yeah, 100%. I'll be thinking about this game. It could go this way, it could go that way. The Bengals could win, Bengals could lose. I know this team needs help from other teams around the league, and they put themselves in this position. But for some reason, Joe Burrow, number 9. I believe in him. I really do. And I believe in this offense. They're playing some insane football. And I saw the Hard Knocks clip, because I haven't watched Hard Knocks. It's been a little too hard, but goodness, if they make the playoffs, you better believe I'll go back and watch every episode, because that'll be incredible TV. There was a clip from last week. Joe Burrow was talking to Sam Hubbard. Joe Burrow hasn't talked about the playoffs that much. He's pretty much just left that off of, when he's been asked about it, because, hey, they were losing a lot of games, and I don't blame him. But he was talking to Sam Hubbard, and Sam Hubbard's like, yeah, did you see that slide of the playoff scenario? And then Joe's like, yeah, my dad sent me the playoffs. He sent that to me. He wanted me to know, like, hey, there's still a shot. He mentioned it last week when he said, big game, Broncos and the Chargers. And he's obviously aware that they have a chance to do this. Yes, they need help from other teams, but I truly do think they're treating this game. They'll be treating the Steelers game as playoff games. They still have an opportunity. I want nothing more than Cincinnati to play the Bills or Kansas City wild card weekend. Every network in the world wants that. But at first, you've got to beat the Denver Broncos. And they know that. You're at home Saturday. I think the atmosphere is going to be awesome and incredible, almost like a primetime feel. And I hope they get it done. I think it's going to be a tough battle. I think it's going to be close. I think there's going to be a lot of scoring from both offenses, just the way they've been playing this year. And I'm not fully believing in the Bengals defense just yet because they've let me down several times this season. And, I still think that the Broncos offense can get it done too. I'm with you in the 30s. I think the Bengals put up 30, and I'm at 27 too. I think it's just going to be that field goal that does it. Cade York redemption continues, gets it done. Maybe it's a walk-off 27-27. Bengals get down the field and he hits it. So should be fun. Hope they get the dub and they continue to make this season meaningful going into the last regular season game of the season, because you're going to be there in Pittsburgh. You're going to be there for that game. And that game could mean something, because a couple weeks ago we talked about on the podcast, like who knows what that game will mean. But here we are, and this game matters, and every game in the next two, all NFL weekend is going to be a big deal for the Bengals. And hopefully they get it done. Again, we're recording this earlier, so if anything pops up during practice this week, going to be a little bit outdated. But Mike and I believe the Cincinnati Bengals will get it done at Paycor on Saturday.
A little bit. I'm
a little bit.
That's kind of also my thought. Was just like,
you gotta roll. You gotta roll with the whole. Why not? 50-50. Why not? Well, the way this is going, make it 4 in a row. No, it should be pretty fun. I did see a little bit of rain towards the end of the game. Hopefully that changes. 50 degrees. December football, love to see it. So we'll have a recap of what happens against the Bengals and the Broncos. Hope the Steelers take care of business on Christmas Day. Make sure you go check out Mike's work. I know we mentioned it last week. He did a piece on Chris Jenkins. He had 2 sacks in this game. It was a flu game, Zach Taylor said. So incredible stuff from the rookie. Hopefully he continues that. Make sure you follow Mike over on X, Bengals_Sands. You can follow me at LNDS Patterson. Hope everybody has a very Merry Christmas. Appreciate you as always for listening to the podcast. Thank you for listening to It's Always Game Day in Cincinnati.